The air was cold, still, and tense, thick with the metallic tang of jet fuel and smoke. The source of it all loomed in the middle of the runway, a massive commercial airliner, its hull scorched and riddled with damage, sitting at an awkward tilt as if it had barely survived its landing. Its windows were black, empty like the eyes of a corpse. Soldiers in tactical gear moved swiftly in tight formation, weapons drawn, scanning for movement. Emergency crews trailed behind them with stretchers and equipment, prepared for casualties but uncertain what they would find. The scene was quiet, unnaturally so. No signs of life. No cries for help. Just the eerie stillness of something gone terribly wrong. At the edge of the chaos stood a boy. Small, pale, and conspicuously alone, he looked like a ghost dropped into the center of a war zone. No more than 10 years old, with wild blonde hair and wide eyes that had seen too much too fast. He held a ragged teddy bear close to his chest, its seams worn and ear-torn as if it had shielded him through whatever nightmare had unfolded on that plane. His name was Elias. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just stared, his gaze fixed not on the soldiers or flashing lights, but on the lifeless aircraft. His expression was unreadable, distant, as though a part of him was still inside that dark fuselage, standing among shadows and ghosts. His eyes never left the plane. Because he knew. Something was still in there. Something the others weren't ready to see. Flashback begins back to earlier events leading up to the hijacking. A German widow named Nadia and her young son, Elias, prepare to board an overnight flight to New York. Nadia, pale and frail, appears to be suffering from leukemia and hopes to undergo treatment with a specialist doctor upon arrival in the United States. At the airport, as they wait to board, Elias strikes up a friendly conversation with a kind man named Farid who takes a liking to the boy. Meanwhile, Nadia retreats to a quiet corner to take her medication, which seems to cause her intense pain and physical discomfort, hinting that her condition may be more serious or unusual than it first appears. As night falls and the passengers begin to settle into their seats for the long transatlantic flight, a group of men covertly spring into action. Among them is Bastian, the co-pilot who betrays the crew by murdering the onboard sky marshals. With ruthless efficiency, the hijackers disable the aircraft's black box, rendering the plane invisible to air traffic control and radar systems. Their leader, a cold and calculated man named Berg, takes control of the cabin and announces to the frightened passengers that the plane is now under his command. He insists that no one will be harmed so long as they remain calm and cooperative until a ransom is paid. Amid the chaos, Elias instinctively slips away to hide, sensing the danger. Nadia, worried for her son's safety, follows after him through the narrow aisles. However, their movement catches the attention of one of the hijackers, a volatile and sadistic man known as 8-Ball. Without hesitation, he shoots Nadia in the chest at close range. Believing her to be dead, the hijackers leave her where she falls. To further their plan, the hijackers coerce Farid into recording a video statement, falsely claiming that the plane has been taken over by Islamic extremists planning a suicide attack. They intend to use this fabricated narrative to ensure the authorities respond with lethal force, effectively turning the passengers into collateral damage in their ruthless scheme. As Nadia slowly regains consciousness, pain coursing through her body, fragments of memory flood her mind. She relives the tragic day her husband, Nikolai, died, a day that changed her life forever. Their car had broken down in a remote, snowy region, and Nikolai had set off on foot to a nearby farmhouse to seek help, promising to return quickly. But as hours passed with no sign of him, Nadia, growing increasingly worried, decided to follow his path. When she arrived at the farmhouse, she discovered a horrific scene. Nikolai was dead, murdered in a brutal, inexplicable attack. Before she could fully comprehend what had happened, the killer, a monstrous figure cloaked in shadow, lunged at her and bit her. She fought back desperately, managing to survive until sunrise. As the first rays of daylight pierced through the windows, the attacker was consumed by flames, revealing his true nature, a vampire. Reeling from the trauma and newly infected with a monstrous hunger, Nadia returned to the farmhouse searching for answers. Inside, she encountered an elderly vampire, the father of the creature who had attacked her. Blaming her for his son's death and determined to prevent the spread of what he called the evil, the old vampire tried to kill her. In a savage and desperate struggle, Nadia overpowered him and beat him to death. Before fleeing, she discovered and took with her several vials of a mysterious medication, vampire suppressant, that allowed her to keep her growing thirst at bay and cling to the last fragments of her humanity. Determined to protect her son and the remaining passengers, Nadia slips away from the cabin and makes her way to the cargo hold where she can hide from the hijackers and act without drawing attention. In the shadows, she removes the contact lenses and dental prosthetics that have hidden her mutated eyes and elongated fangs, revealing her true nature. With her suppressant wearing off and the gunshot wound weakening her, she gives in to her hunger and feeds on a caged dog in the hold, an act of reluctant necessity that begins to restore her strength. However, one of the hijackers stumbles upon her in the act. Cornered and running on instinct, Nadia attacks him savagely, killing him and drinking his blood. The powerful rush of fresh human blood completes her transformation, unleashing her full vampiric strength and instincts. Now fully empowered, Nadia reconnects with Farid, who is still being held under threat. With her abilities restored, she fights back against the hijackers. Together with Farid and a brave student named Muhammad who had been quietly observing the chaos, they manage to overpower several of the hijackers just as the criminals prepare to parachute out of the plane with their ransom. Muhammad takes control of the flight systems and successfully reroutes the aircraft back to its original course, giving the authorities a chance to respond. Meanwhile, in a last-ditch effort, Berg storms the cockpit to reclaim control. But Nadia is waiting for him. She ambushes him and sinks her fangs into his neck before he can react. Knowing the risk of turning him into another monster like herself, she drives a knife into his chest before the transformation can take hold, ending the threat he poses once and for all. Realizing that Nadia poses the greatest threat to their plan, the hijackers assign the sadistic 8-Ball to eliminate her. He hunts her down and incapacitates her using powerful ultraviolet light, which burns her skin and leaves her weakened and vulnerable. Taking advantage of her condition, he restrains her and forcibly extracts a vial of her blood, recognizing its potential. Just as he prepares to drive a stake through her heart and finish her off, Elias intervenes. In a panicked attempt to protect his mother, he grabs Berg's abandoned gun and accidentally fires it, striking part of the aircraft and causing sudden depressurization. The drop in oxygen knocks out Muhammad in the cockpit, leaving the plane momentarily uncontrolled. Taking advantage of the chaos, the hijackers retake the cockpit and begin to lower the plane's altitude, allowing the cabin pressure to normalize and restoring breathable air. Meanwhile, 8-Ball escapes into the cargo hold with the stolen vial of Nadia's blood. Believing he can harness the same power she possesses, he injects himself, and despite Nadia's desperate attempt to stop him, she is too late. The transformation is rapid and violent. 8-Ball becomes a vampire, but without any of Nadia's restraint or humanity. Now a monster with enhanced strength and a thirst for carnage, 8-Ball turns on the other hijackers, slaughtering them one by one in a blood-soaked frenzy. Only Bastian, the co-pilot, manages to survive by keeping his distance. Back in the main cabin, the surviving passengers, terrified but determined, arm themselves with whatever they can find: broken bottles, luggage straps, metal trays. Nadia, despite her appearance and monstrous nature, manages to earn their trust. She speaks to them calmly, assuring them that she wants to help protect them, not harm them. Seeing her willingness to fight against the greater threat, the passengers agree to cooperate. Together, they work to trap 8-Ball in the cargo hold, locking him inside and securing the plane once more, at least for the moment. As Com briefly returns to the cabin, Bastian informs Nadia of a critical problem: the plane doesn't have enough fuel to reach its original destination in New York. They are running out of time and must land soon. Meanwhile, one of the gravely injured passengers, desperate to cheat death, makes a fatal decision. Hoping to be turned into a vampire and avoid dying, he secretly unlocks the cargo hold to free 8-Ball. But the plan backfires. Rather than turning him, 8-Ball brutally kills him and then rampages through the cabin, infecting most of the remaining passengers. Within moments, the cabin becomes a nightmarish scene of violence and chaos as new vampires rise, driven by bloodlust. Understanding the severity of the threat, Nadia makes a grim decision. She tells Farid and Elias that the only way to prevent the outbreak from spreading is to destroy the infected passengers before the plane lands. She plans to use the explosives brought aboard by the hijackers to blow up the cabin and herself along with it. But Elias, unwilling to lose his mother again, grabs the detonator and tries to carry out the plan himself. Before he can act, he is surrounded by the newly turned vampires. Desperate to protect her son, Nadia makes Farid promise that he will look after Elias no matter what happens. With time running out and her strength fading, she kills Bastian and feeds on him to regain the energy needed for one last fight. She then charges into the vampire-infested cabin, battling her way through in a desperate attempt to save Elias. However, 8-Ball intercepts her. In a brutal confrontation, he overpowers Nadia and sinks his fangs into her, draining her blood to further increase his strength. As he turns his attention to Elias, ready to claim another victim, Farid makes a bold and selfless move. He turns the plane directly into the path of the rising sun. Sunlight floods the cabin, engulfing 8-Ball in searing rays. Screaming in agony, he bursts into flames and is cast out of the plane, plummeting to his death, ending his reign of terror once and for all. With 8-Ball destroyed and the immediate threat gone, Elias finds his mother gravely weakened and on the verge of death. Desperate to save her, he makes a heartbreaking choice. He cuts himself and offers his blood to her. Nadia hesitates, torn between her love for her son and the monstrous hunger that consumes her. Unable to resist, she drinks and the blood revives her. But as the taste overwhelms her, something changes. Her desire for Elias's blood grows stronger, more dangerous. Horrified by the threat she now poses to her own child, Nadia pulls away and flees into the shadows of the plane, choosing to isolate herself rather than risk harming him. Back to the present, as Elias, still traumatized and desperate, struggles to cope up with the present situation. Meanwhile, Farid tries to warn them of the danger still lurking on board. They plead with the soldiers not to enter the plane, explaining that vampires remain inside. But the authorities dismiss their warnings, assuming the two are confused or hysterical. Ignoring the pleas, a team of armed soldiers boards the aircraft, hoping to find survivors. Instead, they walk straight into a nightmare. Inside the darkened cabin, the remaining vampires, feral and ravenous, launch a brutal assault, massacring the soldiers in a matter of minutes. As chaos erupts, Elias, unwilling to give up on his mother, escapes from the ambulance where he's being held and races back to the tarmac. Peering into the plane, he sees Nadia once more, this time crouched over a fallen soldier, feeding. Her eyes glow, her face bloodied and wild. It is clear she has crossed a line she cannot return from. With tears in his eyes, Elias accepts what must be done. He reaches into his teddy bear where he had hidden the detonator earlier and activates it. A massive explosion tears through the aircraft, engulfing the remaining vampires in fire, including his mother. The blast ends the threat, but at a devastating personal cost. In the aftermath, Farid is cleared of suspicion and released from military custody. He finds Elias outside the smoldering wreckage, and the two embrace tightly, bound by shared loss, grief, and the painful knowledge that Nadia's final act was one of sacrifice to protect her son and the world.